rehearsed except for the part where they come to get us to bring us on stage to come out because, you know, everybody was doing that. My name is Tom Brown, and welcome to Elvis Week here at Graceland. And all of you in the theater here, welcome. And everyone out there in virtual land watching on streaming, welcome to our event that we're having here, a little listening party. To my left is Ernst Jorgensen, the producer of this incredible box set. And Ernst and I, over the years, I'm always excited when I see Ernst at Elvis Week because I know something's going on in the Elvis music world when Ernst is here. We've talked about so many different editions of things over the years. What I'm excited about with this box set is it's a look at a place that was so important to Elvis that we've been thinking about as the home of Elvis, Elvis's playground, the town he roamed around in at 1 o'clock in the morning, and the place that he rented the theaters out, and the amusement parks and things like that. But it was also a place of music for him. And all of that started at 706 Union Avenue, 70 years ago this summer.
You've just been listening to That's All Right, and if you don't have the Boy from Tupelo set, you actually never heard it like this before, because when RCA re-released That's All Right, when they bought the contract from Sun Records, they thought that sounds a little pitiful. Let's put some reverb on it. And every release since then had reverb on it until we restored it for Boy from Tupelo. And it's part of this set basically because this set is for a major audience. This is what we try to sell to the whole world, and it's thematical, so it has to be in there. And it's very enjoyable. And when we talk about where Elvis was back in those days, yeah, but he was playing out at the Eagle's Nest, a little club at the swimming pool where he would play in the intermissions. He would go with his girlfriend Dixie down on Beale Street and into the Flamingo Club, which was all Afro-Americans. And that's where he met Calvin Newborn and his brother and Ike Turner and stuff, and they got used to this white kid hanging around and being accepted, and that's where this whole story starts really, with all those musical influences that became Elvis's music at Sun that he developed over those 18 months where he was with Sam Phillips, and that's what disc one of this box set is all about. But that's not the new thing. The new thing comes with the next disc.
Yeah. The town of Memphis, I mean, we were talking about it the other day, that this summer was 70 years ago, July 5th, 1954, at 706 Union Avenue, Elvis cuts That's All Right Mama, almost by accident. All of the different types of music he was doing that day really did not impress Sam Phillips. The legend is he was kind of noodling around. Sam heard him doing That's All Right. That became the song. A few days later, Sam took the acetate to Dewey Phillips at WHBQ Radio on the magazine floor of the Chiska Hotel and played it. Everything went crazy on the phone lines. And then about 20 days later, at Overton Park Shell, Elvis does a live performance. Now think about it, July 4th, Elvis is celebrating July 4th with his parents. The next day he walks in, a legend is born. And 20-something days later, he's playing at Overton Park Shell. Probably playing that song in Blue Moon of Kentucky over and over, I think, is a legend,
yeah,
because he didn't have any records.
Actually, one of the many great Elvis people that I work with who are obsessed about this or that element of Elvis' career, Johnny, he came to me and said, well, did you really realize that Elvis's version of That's All Right Mama, which a lot of people said, oh, Elvis stole the music from the blues artists and stuff. That's not Arthur Crudup's That's All Right Mama. It's actually pieced together of 5 different Arthur Crudup songs where Elvis half remembered the lyrics from one and something from the other. So no, he didn't rip off Arthur Crudup. He made Crudup a lot of money, I hope. But also created his own version of that rhythm and blues music that he loved.
Yeah, I've heard it explained a couple of times. We hear the term cultural appropriation, that Elvis had cultural appreciation. It was music to Elvis. And everyone on Beale Street, all people on Beale Street, that was a place he felt comfortable. More so than, senior class at Humes High School with all those kids making fun of his guitar and his pink shirts and his black pants. He was very comfortable on Beale Street, looking in the window, not shopping, but looking in the window at Lansky Brothers that one day he would buy his clothes from. And Memphis became that place. And at that Overton Park show, his very first appearance, he's billed as Ellis Presley, E-L-L-I-S. It's the last time anyone forgot how to spell Elvis Presley. But Memphis was such a part, and the thing I think that impresses me the most about this box set, Elvis, Memphis, it says it very easily, but I had never really sat down and thought about it. The places in this town where Elvis recorded, that's what this box set is about. And those are Sun Records, those are American Sound, Stax, the Mid-South Coliseum, and the Jungle Room. And so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit, little highlights from those eras. And one we'd like to do right now we started out with the very first one, That's All Right Mama. In January of 1969, Elvis decides he's just a month or so out of the comeback special, the Singer Presents Elvis special. All interest about Elvis is at its peak. He's been doing movies, and suddenly he's back in that black leather, and he needs some new music. He's going to be opening in Vegas in the summer of '69, but he needs new music. And so he decides, you know what, there's a lot going on. I mean, just American Sound is one of the hot spots.
It's one of the hot spots. At that time, Neil Diamond was big. Dusty Springfield was big, Son of a Preacher Man. They'd done the Box Tops, and basically done a lot of hit records by lesser-known artists, but they were hits. Really, it was some of Elvis's friends that kept pushing Elvis to record in Memphis, because the previous sessions Elvis had was in the year before, in January of '68, and they were very unproductive. He was there to record. He only did 4 songs over 2 nights. That would normally have been an album, and so there was this satisfaction with Elvis in going back to Nashville. It was like something fresh was needed, and now we're going to play something that is really fresh. So here we go, Suspicious Minds.
And we're gonna filmmaker, and right there in the hat, the Grammy Award-winning record producer and the engineer, mixer, and has his own recording studio, and has worked on a lot of Elvis projects. Mr. Matt Ross Spang, welcome to the stage. A couple of things. Over the years, we've done these events, and I've always been very conscious of time and that we have other places we have to do. I looked at the schedule, and this year, Sony allowed me. They said, if you want to play the whole song, go ahead and play it. And so I feel like you never get in trouble playing Elvis music. I get in trouble if I cut it off early. So I'm not going to be doing that today. And Ernst leaned over and whispered to me that it's almost like it's what you don't hear now. And talk to me a little bit about what message you wanted to deliver with this music, with what we are hearing now with this mix.
Obviously, as we all know, it's not like we find new recordings. We have to find new ways of presenting it. We also have to remember that there's a whole world out there that are not the dedicated people we see in this room. There's a lot of people we can hope to, and I feel I'm on a mission. Not a religious one necessarily, but I have a message. And for this box set that came from the idea of the 70th anniversary of That's All Right, and was expanded into let's try an original and different view on the songs you know very well. And what we did was, and it's something we've done in other packages, we decided that it should be like a fly on the wall. What did it sound like in the studio when this was actually recorded? Different to what people do nowadays, where they record the drums and the bass first, and then the piano, and then. It was everybody in a room back then, except that from the late 60s and onwards, because technology developed into 8 to 16 tracks, 24 tracks, they started overdubbing on stuff. We wanted you to hear this before they overdubbed it. And does that mean we don't like the overdubs? No, absolutely not. The masters, as you know them, you have them in your collection, and they will forever be available. We're not taking them away, but we can give you a glimpse of something that is different. That was my good friend Rob told me that somebody being annoyed on the internet that we took away the backing vocals and the horns on Suspicious Minds. And the principle of all the studio recordings except Sun on this box is that we have not used the strings that they overdubbed, not the horns, and not the additional backing vocals. So we are only presenting on these new mixes that Matt has done for me what it was in the studio. And there's something interesting about, you may have already wondered where the hell are the horns when we played this, and why is it so short? But what I think we want to try and convey with this is that the song becomes different when you take away this stuff. It becomes more intimate. It becomes actually a little more emotional. It's a tough song about what many people encounter in life. And it's not that it's better than the other one, but it's a different story, and it gets a little more emotional. And that is actually something that we will see again when we go to other tracks. But also it reveals the way it was recorded and maybe why it was so glorious. And Matt, if we go first with the sound at the Memphis sessions in 1969, I think most people who know enough about this, that they know that these are from Memphis, can hear that Elvis sounds different and everything is different.
Yeah, I think Elvis was used to RCA at that point, and which is a big corporation, very nice equipment, top of the line everything. And American was not that. American was essentially kind of like Sun. It was a smaller room. It was, Elvis famously said when he walked in, he saw rats running along the. That's what it looked like when it was new, So I think they were more of a, and this is not to take anything away from Chip's moment, the producer of the band, because he had probably the best band and one of the best producers of all time. Chip's moment had more hits than I think anyone I can think of, but the equipment wasn't the same and as well maintained as at RCA. RCA would have in-house technicians who would check stuff every day, make sure it was top of the line. Chip's probably used it till he thought, this sounds funny, and he swapped it out. So I think that's what you hear different there is not top of line equipment, maybe different vocal mic than Elvis was used to singing on, and a different room, obviously.
There's a slight hoarseness and a slight. There's something different about it. It's more soulful on this than it was on Nashville recordings. Not to put down the Nashville recordings.
Absolutely, I think Elvis. What I learned doing all these box sets is Elvis sings every take like it's the take. He doesn't check out. A lot of times when you work on a session, if the band's still trying to figure out the part, but the singer already knows his part, if it starts to take multiple takes, the singer kind of checks out while they wait for the band. Elvis never did that, and I think he does get hoarse a little bit, and it's funny, the letter by the Box Tops was cut in that same studio, and Alex Chilton's super hoarse on that song, because I think they made him sing it a bunch of times till he kind of lost it, maybe the tone, but he got the energy and the feeling.
I also think he got the flu, Elvis.
Yeah, well, there's probably a good amount of stuff in the air in that. If you look at the studio,
it's not all the recordings from the American studio stacks. It's a selection that fills one CD, and it's different from track to track how much it is different from what it was. But it's also for us important to compose a CD that is nice playing from beginning to end. You can't necessarily put every song next to each other and it's comfortable. And when we go through this, some of the songs were almost recorded live on the spot with no overdubs, like I'll Hold You in My Heart and After Loving You. And then there's somewhere when we remove all the extra stuff, it's really different. So if we can play the next song, this will be a good example of that.
Couple of observations. It's like an entirely new song. Elvis is singing harmony with himself. And there are not that many people playing on that recording. It's just him and his voice. And it's like a new recording. Yeah. If you're like me, the parts about this whole album, I spent a lot of time driving up here and driving around listening to this when it dropped on streaming. And what got me, these songs are ingrained in our brain, so when we hear the beginning, it's almost like when you look at something that's misspelled, you don't even see the misspelling because your brain has already corrected it and moved on. We've heard these songs, the new fans have not, but we have heard these songs so many times. Anytime there's a slight something that's different, I'm like, what? I heard extra measures in this song. When they came out of the break, before he came back to sing, it wasn't right there like it was on the record. The original recording that we had, there was like a few more seconds of music. And this one is much more of a story, and it's not Vegased up with strings and voices. And it's always been one of my favorite songs because he says my name, Tommy, in this song. So if I could get a clean cut of him saying Tommy, I would.
If you can afford it,
If I can afford it. Because he also says Parson Brown in a Christmas song, so I can edit Tommy Brown together. But Matt, for you, I mean, you're in that room hearing this. What are your thoughts? Because you're a musician.
Oh yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like Indiana Jones, you know, when he sees the Ark of the Covenant. To pull up that multi-track and hear that Elvis harmonized with himself, and then you get to ride that fader is really cool because, you know, I'm sure I would think that was probably Elvis's idea in the room. I could see Chip saying, but I could see Elvis going, "Hey, give me another track. I got a harmony I want to do," you know, because a lot of times they'd save it for the big vocal groups after. So to get to put that in there for y'all, and that's not tape echo, like Tom said. That's him doing a double and then a harmony on the chorus through the whole song. And Chips knew exactly what he wanted, so he would oftentimes commit the chamber reverb they had there to the track. So that's the original American reverb. So that's all the elements from there. Just we got to put that little vocal more in for you because it's not covered up by some of the other stuff. And that was really like a neck hair moment for me getting to pull that track up the first time and hear it.
It's so emotional. Also, too, a couple of you have actually hit on this idea. When Elvis's music is playing, don't look at us. Just close your eyes, because I saw it down here. Robert, for you, you're a writer and you know Memphis well, you know Memphis music. It's amazing to me that Elvis moves to Memphis from Tupelo, and one of the things you said in the incredible liner notes that are in this 30-something page booklet you get, him telling the story of this town, really. Elvis fell into the right town when his parents moved from Tupelo to Memphis.
At the right time.
At
too.
the right time.
Right. You know, this was for people in Tupelo. Tell me if I'm wrong. This predates your time, Tom. But
I'll represent.
Memphis is, you know, we're always the bright lights on the horizon, the place you want to get to, the place where all the agriculture is sent to be taken out into the world, where the cotton goes. It's all coming to Memphis. There's like it's a magnetic draw, and really, we're just a small town like Tupelo, made large by our place on the river, by geography. So I think on the one hand, Elvis was very comfortable when he came here because it was like Tupelo, just larger. The other thing was that being raised adjacent to Shake Rag, he came here and was very comfortable hearing WDIA, which had just begun to broadcast that year, the first station in the nation with an all-black disc jockey staff playing black music. So he didn't even have to go down to the church on the corner or the club around the corner to hear this. He could just tune the dial. So Memphis was very welcoming to him, and as well as black music, he was in walking distance of the auditorium, North Hall, where he could hear gospel quartets on a regular basis. So it was kind of like, it was all the promise of everything he'd hoped for realized.
Just as Chips had American sound going, And there's Chips with Elvis at American Sound. And as Ernst had said, that studio was churning out hits for so many different kinds of artists. Sweet Caroline was recorded in that little funky studio.
Sandy
I'm sorry.
Pelosi.
Yeah. You keep looking at the list of what was recorded, and one's bigger than the other. And then there's also a studio in Memphis that just so happens to be the best at what it does, and that is Stax Music, right here in Memphis, Tennessee. And it's turning out hits. And later on in the 70s, Elvis is not wanting to travel to Nashville. He's doing the concert tours, but they get him in town to go to Stax. And talk to me, Robert, just a second about Stax Music and what you think Elvis was seeking and what he found at Stax, because we're going to hear some Stax music.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think the first draw was convenience. It's right down Elvis Presley Boulevard. You know, it was very, very easy for him to get there.
Like one turn.
One turn.
Yeah.
And it was it wasn't quite as in terms of walking in and seeing rats on the rafters. It wasn't quite that funky. It was pretty close. You know, I mean, it's a converted movie theater. I encourage everybody to go visit the Stax Museum of American Soul Music in the reconstructed building, because it's a great exhibit they've got there. But it was a proper studio. They brought the RCA truck down. I personally have mixed feelings about that. You know, it's a cleaner, they got a cleaner recording, but it's hard for corporations to trust the funk. And
That's a T-shirt, Robert. Trust the funk.
I'm working.
Somebody
for
write a
one
note
of
down.
these
Trust the
companies.
funk.
Could we get a little excursion into the promised land?
Let's go to Stax. Chuck Berry song. One of the reasons I think today I'm hard of hearing is because when songs like this came out, and I would go home and put it on my little Sears record player with my big giant earphones I wore so long my ears would sweat underneath them, if you had to be there. And I would, at the end when songs would fade out, I would turn it up because I could tell they're still going. Somebody just decided to fade the song out. Like the band is still playing somewhere in the distance, you know. But that's an amazing mix of that too.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Matt. Going back to what Robert said about the Stax sessions that produced the albums Raised on Rock, Good Times, and Promised Land. It was actually two sets of sessions. The first was just before Elvis got divorced. He was fairly depressed. It was in July of '73. Lisa is there and Priscilla is around, and they go to Stax the first time around, and they have endless problems with the equipment down there. This breaks down, that breaks down, and the final insult, and Elvis then went home, was that when he got back to record on the last day, somebody stolen the microphone. And somebody knows who actually did that, but that created the problem.
Where were you in 1975?
I was in kindergarten. So that is why we brought down the truck. We nasty people from up there in New York brought down our truck to record it, and we ended up actually not only bringing a new 16-track machine because Stax only had an 8-track. We brought 2 down there and still also recorded on a 3rd machine. So we had 3 sets of tapes from that. I mean, that was very different to the first sessions. But one thing that we should also notice when we talk about why is the music like it is and why is it created like that, and we touched briefly on the musicians in Memphis that they played. They're one of the best bands, and they were one of the best bands because they played very little, very subtle, but very elegant. And at Stax, it's a completely different band. Any of you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think one special moment I had while mixing the Stax stuff was one of the original guitar players, Bobby Manuel, who was a house guitar player at Stax, came by my studio and hung out while I mixed some of these. And he was laughing because he had put phaser, which is like a very 70s guitar effect, on every guitar part on the Elvis stuff. And he was like, oh man, I just bought that pedal and I wanted to use it. But it was fun to have him there, and I think that's what you hear in these recordings is not so much the traditional piano, acoustic guitar, clean electric guitar. You hear phaser electric, you hear a clavinet, you hear some of these cooler keyboards and things that were coming out at the time that Stax was using, kind of more R&B instrumentation than a typical RCA Elvis session, which I think is great. And as Ernst mentioned, that band having, I think Al Jackson was only on 1 or 2 songs, but having some of these guys are new to Elvis in a way, but also just studio pros is wonderful.
And also he's using most of his live band as a studio band at this time. So the guitar you're hearing is, as most of you would definitely be able to hear anytime, is James Burton playing. And the exact reasons why Elvis hadn't really used his live band from '69 in the studio up until '72, I don't know the answer to that, but over time he brought in, and certainly at the second set of Stax sessions, he brought in his own musicians then and added up with Johnny Christopher or somebody else, local Memphis musicians. But it's a whole other animal in a way that plays here. This is a band that plays a lot, whereas where the others more subdued.
Real quick, Ernst gave me maybe my favorite mix note of all time on Promised Land. I sent a mix of Promised Land. There was a time difference from Memphis to his home, and I woke up the next morning and there was email saying I was hoping for a little more grease. Memphis grease, so I used my skills to pull that out in the next mix, but that was my favorite note, a little more grease on that.
So we've got Trust the Funk,
Two t-shirts.
and 2 t-shirts now. I wanted more grease. Robert, it's hard to realize now. Elvis has been gone since 1977, and we continue to show up here in Memphis. We continue to add new fans to the world of Elvis. They continue to come in. They discover Elvis. The movie helped a young generation realized that they could own this guy. He didn't belong to their grandparents and parents. But in the 1970s, when Elvis was alive and making these albums, we were seeing a career. We didn't have distance then. We were seeing a career that was ascending in '68 after the movies, and then it was into Vegas, and it was back on the charts. And then the '70s become kind of an up and down feeling. And that's really the ebb and flow of any career in entertainment. But Elvis had an unusual, we tend to think now it was all top of the line, top of the charts, but it was really the '70s were a time of really live touring.
Well, can I just for a second, because there's obviously something that's interesting here in that '68 TV special, then In the Ghetto, then That's the Way It Is, then On Tour, then 4 sellouts at Madison Square Garden, then Aloha from Hawaii. That's where we are in early '73, before Stax.
You made me forget what I was going to say, Ernst. No, I was going to say it's good to be the king, but it's difficult to be the king. You know, he is not, the first. There's no one who has come in. Elvis came in with television in the '50s. Big difference from all the other, from Frank Sinatra. No one else went into heart and hearth like Elvis had, and had become attached to so many people that way, so young, so different. And I think that, and so he was a new kind of star, and every day that star continued, shooting across the sky, it was a first. And I think with the distance we have now, we have more empathy for the difficulties that it had to be, that were on his shoulders, the responsibility that he carried being the star, living up to his past, kind of, blindly looking into the future. There wasn't someone before him who had blazed that trail. He was cutting all all the overgrowth to find a way through this forest.
I remember reading an interview with Paul McCartney, and he said, you know, the Beatles were inspired by Elvis, and the Beatles inspired bands, and they inspired, but it all really goes back to Elvis, and Paul McCartney said, in the days of Beatlemania, when they would be in one hotel room, the four of them looking out the window, prisoners of their own fame, looking at the thousands of girls down outside the Plaza Hotel in New York before the Ed Sullivan Show, at least they had each other. And he said as they got older, they realized, wow, Elvis did this by himself. There was no one else to go, are we doing okay? Is this normal? Is this just to talk about what's going on? He had no one to do that. He wrote the book, published the book, owned the printing press, I mean, all of that. And Elvis, over the years, if there's been any criticism about his musical abilities, it's that, well, you know, Elvis didn't write his songs. He didn't write his own songs. Well, no, but you know, a songwriter writes songs about life. They write songs about what they're feeling, what they're going through. An interpreter of songs like Elvis does the same thing with songs that others have written, finding something that speaks to what he's going through at the time. And there's a lot of this music from that period of time of what you were just saying about where he was in his personal life, of choices he made with the songs he was recording and what he felt, and that message that he would get across just like a songwriter does. And you've got a song selected that kind of tells that.
That was the perfect introduction.
Oh.
Let's hear this song about Good Time Charlie.
He did not want that to be over. That just had a little groove to it, and it a little extended in the studio from what we heard on the radio, but Ernst brings up a great point about choices of lyrics in that song.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know how many of you know the original version by Daniel O'Keefe, but it has a verse that goes, no, I think I can.
Okay.
See, that's trust, right?
Right there. I got you.
I take the pills. I take the pills to ease the pain. I can't find the thing to ease the brain. Elvis left out these two lines. You can make your own interpretation of it. But the irony is that he kept the other two lines that Tom will read to you in his beautiful voice.
He left in the play around, you'll lose your wife. You play too long, you'll lose your life. Part of that verse that he did leave out, when he came back after that long break and repeated the third verse and didn't do the fourth, this verse, I got my pills to ease the pain, can't find a thing to ease the rain. Sometimes I'd like to try and settle down, but everybody's leaving town. It's a song about, it might be too late, that this is, the fair's moving on, things might be different.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating look into what was going on and the choices.
Yeah, and it's back to Robert's point of what do you do? I mean, you played to the whole world at one time with Aloha from Hawaii. What is bigger? And how do you go on from that? I think the profile you make in your liner notes of not what it is to us to see a career where there's a lot of people coming out to see Elvis shows, but the halls are smaller and smaller. The records that he put out get less and less in the charts. They still do well, but it's 90% of what it used to be, 80%. And the magic of Robert's liners is that he looks at it from within. What would it be to be a person like that?
Yes. I want to say too that it's along the same lines. This has just been a hit for Danny O'Keefe, and I think it's important. I think that, and there are several songs like this and in the live programs and in the live concerts throughout, where he's doing other contemporary songs. It is, I think, an effort to say, I'm still irrelevant. I changed rock and roll. I changed music forever. I changed culture forever. And now we're 20 years on, and I am Elvis Presley. I can't be the next Elvis Presley. What can I be? And I think he's grappling with that at this time. So cutting someone else's recent hit is a way to say, I want to stay irrelevant. And I think the choice of, there's a lot of hits he could have cut, but as y'all are pointing out, there's a lot of, a lot we can read into his life in this song.
And it's also, all of us who've lived with Elvis for so long, and it's been part of us, and the frustration that it ended like it did. When you get this distance to it, you can actually look at that it is almost like natural. It be like that. How many times can you go in the recording studio and believe you're gonna do the next In the Ghetto or Hound Dog? And as we see it over time, it gets more and more difficult to get Elvis into the studio. The last album, Moody Blue, was combined of things Felsen had recorded on the road. The last sessions in Nashville in early '77, Elvis didn't show up. He probably couldn't be bothered, or was maybe tired or sad.
And I think also I think we have to try to feel the pressure that he must have felt. Because every time he entered that studio, if he felt like having cut so many hits, he felt the need to cut a hit. Then you're surrounded by, you're not always getting the best material, so you're trying to make the most of what you can, and you're afraid you've developed such a massive audience that a small failure becomes huge, and so I think that there was a risk. I think he lived, constantly on the edge, because he was trying to he wanted to always succeed, and it was intimidating to do that.
But it's not like, we're not trying to paint a picture of all misery, because Elvis had a great showing up in a concert hall here in Memphis, so we should try and listen to How Great Thou Art, and notice, very important, notice the applause at the end. I asked you to pay notice. If you hear that guy clapping like,
Thank you, I really like it.
there's an explanation for that.
It's very nice of you, thank you.
I was there at that concert. Did you isolate my applause, Matt, on that? Did you go back to the master and isolate that
That's
applause?
the only AI used to
Hey,
get
only
your
AI was
applause
just
out.
for section 312. That was Wednesday night, March 20th. You listening to that? I was listening to that. I was listening to a guy win a Grammy Award with that song. Right? That version, that song, won a Grammy Award. Elvis only won 3, all for gospel. That individual recording won for Best Sacred Performance at the Grammys the next year. And I always was fascinated when the album came out a few months later. The cover of this album, Elvis is recorded live on stage at the Mid-South Coliseum. Graceland is the cover of the album, and I got the record. I went out and bought it immediately because I had been at the show, and I dropped the needle and I listened to the whole thing, flip it over, listen to it. I'm thinking, this wasn't all the songs he sang. He sang more than this. I didn't have setlist.com to go to see what songs were missing. It took me until the Legacy Edition came out to hear the complete concert that I had been out. But there's a line that Elvis has in there. Colonel Parker had always been very guarded about Elvis coming back to Memphis because, Robert, as you were saying about touring and about the audiences, what if you come back to your hometown and you don't even sell it out? Because in this concert, if you remember, Elvis said, it has always been said that a person cannot return to their hometown, but you have disproven that theory completely, and you really made it worthwhile. There was some concern there that they were not going to sell that out, but they did. So this Memphis recording, part of this box set, anything special you did with this concert recording? Because this had been out, in the 70s and for the Legacy Edition.
Absolutely. I think, they mix these quick, and now that it's been digitized, we still stay pretty much analog, but with digital, I can be a little more surgical. So those flutes, like hearing the flutes on How Great Thou Art, American Trilogy, I can help bring those out because those are all sub-mixed in with all the other things. So just bringing out those little elements for us all to hear the clarity, I think, is what's really exciting to hear. And I certainly leaned on the audience, Mike, so when you hear like Ronnie Tutt, the big drum fills, you feel like you you can hear the Coliseum, you can hear that. And I think that, to me, is real special, to feel the space.
Especially from my section. Especially from my section over there. And the other place in Memphis that Elvis recorded at, you know, it's I think about it, and Robert, I think you dealt with this in your notes about Elvis spent his entire life wanting to be a recording star, wanting to get in the studio, and then he reaches a point in his life that the last thing he could be bothered by doing is to be in the recording studio. So finally, they bring the recording studio to Memphis, to the Jungle Room.
Yes. Yes. Again, I think that's about the responsibility he felt and the trepidation that he felt going in every time he made a song. Because it would be afraid if it weren't a hit, and might also, if it's a hit, he's keeping himself under this enormous pressure. It's a difficult, you know, it's great to be the king, but it's difficult to be
Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yeah.
This song, this was from Ernst when we had our meeting about this to talk about what they wanted to play. This next song was one that you were like, this is the one emotionally that I want everybody.
And I want to say that it was also Ernst who brought my attention to this song. I had not given it proper listen, and when I was writing the notes, Ernst said, "Go back," and he was right.
And what really is emotional to me is how Robert's beautiful description of the cage or the prison that Elvis was in, how it connects to the feel of this song. It's an old Irish song. It's originally called Londonderry Air, but had new lyrics and became Danny Boy, and it had always been a song that Elvis sang. It was his father's favorite song, as were quite a few others, but apparently also this one. And I had a personal wonderful experience that I'll just share with you, that I'd gone to America on a Greyhound bus trip. I got stuck in Asheville because Greyhound had lost my suitcase, and I was sitting there with a bad sunburn, reading through the local newspaper out of total boredom, and suddenly I saw this little notice that Elvis was playing next town over in Johnson City, Tennessee. So I didn't have a driver's license, so I got on a bus and ended up outside the hall. And was it sold out? Yep. Were there any way I could get tickets? No. But one friendly guy said that, well, the group is staying out at so-and-so motel. Why don't you go out there? Had nothing else to do, and went out there, sat at the restaurant, and spotted Felton Jarvis, and David Briggs, and James Burton, and the Sweet Inspiration sitting over there. I thought I was gonna faint. I was 25 years old at the time, and I was overwhelmed by it. I'd written Felton, actually, and his wife had written me back, so eventually the Sweets leave, and James leaves, and Briggs leaves, and it's not to quote anybody, but it's now or never. So I walked over and sat with Felton, and he remembered that I had written him about recording session facts, which was my obsession. And so we talked about it, and it cheered up, and then he said, "Ernst, I have just been down to Graceland and recorded Elvis. And the most fascinating thing we did was that Elvis sat down at the piano. We can discuss that, but he sat down and he sang Danny Boy. It was totally wonderful. He said to me, wait till the record comes out. So Felton, I hope I haven't done you injustice by taking off all your overdubs, but here it is in its naked beauty. Oh.
I don't know how you follow that. The emotion, the voice never left. I mean, it was there. Those sessions, though, they were, things that any excuse Elvis would have to take the guys upstairs and go through his wardrobe to give out shirts just to keep from recording. The time Norbert said he came downstairs to record in a full Denver police outfit. Turned out some amazing music, and all this time, and I don't want to say too much against Felton because they're working with different rules and different needs of what they need at the time. I worked at Turner Classic Movies forever, and what we always used to say was you can't judge a film made in a certain time based on the rules in society today. It stands as its own. It wasn't made for today, it was made for that time. There are things that we would not do today, but we can't apply those to things of the past. That recording, the way we received it in '77 in Moody Blue and Elvis Presley Boulevard, was for the time. There was some amazing music buried in there. And thank you guys for, on all these recordings, going in and letting us hear, basically, letting us hear what Elvis heard when he went into the control room in those recording studios, or when he went out to the truck, if he did, or into the kitchen or whatever. And, you know, every time I hear anything like that from the Jungle Room, I think of Matt, one of the boxes you did, where in one of the takes you hear the phone ringing, and your daddy answered the phone. They were recording in the living room, in the Jungle Room. It was just it was a home studio.
Well, I just want to say thank y'all to y'all because, you know, I usually stay in a dark room and I work on this stuff and then I don't get to see y'all cry and to watch you guys all cry and see the emotion. It just makes it all so much more worthwhile. So thank y'all for listening and enjoying.
Anything you want to say, Robert, in closing?
No, I just, you know, it's an honor to be out here to share this experience. I was honored that Ernst and Sony asked me to, you know, go back and kind of reassess the intersection of Elvis and Memphis, and I think, you know, sort of premiering it here in Memphis with the fans is the absolute right way to bring it out to the public.
Yeah. Ernst, any final thoughts?
Well, on this particular recording, it's a comfortable reminder to most of us that it's not necessarily when we are the youngest or the strongest version of ourselves that we have the most to offer.
Elvis Memphis, available on 5 CDs and 111 total tracks, 88 newly mixed by Mr. Matt Ross Spang down there and his team. If you're into vinyl, luckily I held on to my vinyl from the 60s and 70s, and who knew, it came back, even though it never left my house. Two LP set with 24 tracks, highlights, and for the young people out there, when you buy the LP, don't leave it in the car before you get home. Take it directly home. Take it from a kid of the 70s. You only want to warp a Kiss album one time before you realize that you can't leave it in the car. And they are, all these mixes, pure and without overdubs, and an incredible booklet with a story of all of this music that really weaves this together in kind of a dramatic fashion of what we are listening to. It's all about the context. So to Matt, to Robert, to Ernst, thank you. I can't wait to see what's next. I always enjoy seeing you at these events because I know we're going to have a great time. My name is Tom Brown. I'm from a little town called Tupelo, Mississippi. If you'd like to come see us down at the Elvis birthplace, we'd love to have you, because on the way, you can be listening to Elvis Memphis, available wherever you get your music, streaming sites, and that CD box set and the LPs. And I will say it, even though it is a product of Sony, I will say what we always used to see. Elvis is available on RCA Records and Tapes wherever you buy your music. And thank you to the Sony people back there who let it come out, the LP on the orange label with the white RCA, just like it was back in the day. Thank you.